I love what's happening across the world, across America, in my little view of the world, where men are getting real with other men.
Yeah.
I got too many stories. Years ago, a guy walked in that door over there. I was walking out, he was walking in. First timer, he stood at the threshold and he looked in, and the viewers can't see it, but we have in the other room, we got deer heads and swords and 101st Airborne and Navy and Air Force. We got all this man stuff. He stood at the threshold, and I literally ran into him, and he said, "What is this place?" And I had to come up with an answer. And what came out of my mouth, Robert, was I said, I guess you could say this is a place where men get real. And he got teary-eyed, and he shook his head, and he said, "That's what I thought." Then he said, I didn't know a place like this existed.
Yeah.
We have a great quote, my last, and I'm going to shut up. We had Kevin or I found it on Facebook or somewhere years ago, and it said, "A true friend is someone who knows the song of your heart and can sing it back to you when you have forgotten the words."
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I don't know about the guys listening, but most men would say, I could use a few more like that.
Hey, welcome to God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm excited that you're here today. And if you're here for the first time, know that this moment, what you've clicked to, this was not just a coincidence that you tuned in today. This is not a coincidence that you listened into this conversation. And as we've gathered for my season 2 of God's Glory and Men's Real Stories, I'm excited that you're back for another episode. If you've been here and you've been rocking with us, thank you so much for continuing to listen. I know that as these stories continue to pour from these men's hearts, as God continues to use us the way he has been, it's going to fall on good soil. And I believe today your soil is prepared for these stories, this conversation. And so as we jump into it, know that I know a lot of people's stories sometimes feel like they're falling short. And I know that this podcast is all about truly bringing forth stories of how good God is and how God continues to work in our stories. So if you feel like your story right now is a little on shaky ground, know that if you continue to trust God with your story, he's going to continue to breathe life back into it. He's going to continue to restore you. He's going to continue to walk with you. So I pray that as you listen to these stories, I pray that you will sit back with a community that cares about you and hopes that you feel God's love as well as see God's glory in these men's real stories. So listen, before we get started, you know what I'm going to ask you. Go ahead and do me a favor and click that thumbs up real quick, and you'll be glad you did when you are done listening to this episode. Also, if you haven't subscribed, listen, it won't cost you a thing. It won't show up on your credit card. Know that the subscription is free, and you can hit that subscribe button now to make sure that you don't miss another great episode. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, thank you all for your support, and know that this podcast is nothing without you and the men who God has put it on their hearts to say yes to joining me. Like today's special guest, who God put it on his heart to create a safe space or a refuge for men, not to hide or run away from their problems and responsibility, but to run to Jesus in the community of men who know what it's like to fail, to fall short, and to struggle. Men who are far from perfect, but strive to be more like Christ. Men whose strength is shown through their vulnerability and covering their brothers in support and prayers. So I'm excited to be on location at the barn and welcome Haines Maxwell Jr. to the episode. What's going on, brother?
Hey, Robert. Honored to be with you.
Yeah, no.
Glad you could do something on location at the barn.
Yeah. I feel like truly, I said, it just feel like God is calling me to set this up so that we can actually sit in a setting to where not only has this been created for this fellowship, but also so many men come here to find just that refuge, to find that community that they've been looking for. And as I've been here, that's what I hear a lot.
Yeah.
So before we jump in, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and who you are to this community.
Whoa. Well, I was born in Philadelphia almost 70 years ago. And my family was transferred to Atlanta, Georgia. Then we moved to the Carolinas. And when I was 12 years old, I moved from Raleigh to Charlotte. So I've been in this greater Charlotte area. For your listeners to know, we're in a barn just south of Charlotte, North Carolina, in Indian Land,
right?
South Carolina. But we moved to the Charlotte area when I was 12 years old. I grew up a little sports guy, left all my friends in Raleigh, moved here. I'm just now getting over it,
Right.
actually. And so I grew up in the Charlotte area, spent my college time at UNC Chapel Hill. And when I went off to college, I didn't really believe in anything except the hope that the world revolved around Haines Maxwell Jr. My dad's senior. I'm honored to have Haines number 3, and Haines number 4 just turned 8 years old. So there's
Oh, congratulations.
feel like the whole set.
Awesome.
But I went off to college, and I when I was with a woman for the first time, that I started getting my identity from the response of women. So that kind of led me, like a lot of men, to a crash and burn. I came to know the Lord through trying to find life somewhere else, in sports and in women. Those were the top two, depending on how the Tar Heels and the women were doing. Those were at the top of my list. Became a believer, got married, and sadly, I think because even though I was following Jesus, I still was getting a lot of my identity from women, from my wife. And that's, I'm glad to share more of that as we go on. But that led to, after a 20-year marriage and 3 children, that led to divorce. And I wish that were not part of my story. But almost every day I'm connecting with men, some online, some in person, that are struggling with marriage things. And sadly, I think most of us learn a lot more by failure, right?
For sure. No.
So I got married for the second and final time 20 years ago. And about when Diane and I were about to be married, a fellow approached me in the parking lot of Steel Creek Church of Charlotte, where we had set up a table to recruit men for a men's retreat. He asked me if I knew the book Wild at Heart. I said, I do. He said, have you ever seen the video series? I said, not sure I knew they had a video series. He said, he wrote down, I didn't even know this guy. Wrote down, he said, call this guy named Kevin, 704-309. Wrote down the number, and this Tuesday night, day after tomorrow, when it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, they're going to start the Wild at Heart video series, episode 1, right in this room, in this barn. For the listeners or the viewers, this is about a 5,000 square foot structure, 2,500 square feet downstairs are horse stalls, and upstairs, it's you can see a little bit of it from this shot, man cave. So I walked right up these steps with a friend named Tom Downs, and we thought we'd watch one episode and say, if we like it, we'll take it back to the men in our church as a follow-up to the men's retreat. Because when men get all fired up on a weekend, right? It's like, okay, what do we do next? So I thought I'd be here one time. I've been here, with few exceptions, every single Tuesday night for the last 20 years. I was on the porch with my wife recently, and I'm actually decent at math, but I said, that's 1,000 meetings, if I'm doing the math right. 20 times 52. Yeah. 20 times 5 is 100. 20 times 52 is over 1,000. And we've seen men, it's been so good for my journey, because and I've listened to several of your podcasts, and you've got your t-shirt Vulnerability, and it's a place where men can be authentic. So we've been meeting, every Tuesday for 20 years. And I never count how many guys are here, but a while back, we did a show of hands, and we had men from over 20 different churches at the barn on a Tuesday night, which I love, because and a tip of hat to Pastor Kelvin Smith at Steel Creek. He's talked for decades that I've known him about the big C, the church. Isn't about Steel Creek or Carmel Baptist or Central Church of God or Christ Covenant or Resurrection Lutheran. It's not. I mean, those are expressions of the body, but the body's the big C. Right. And I did a bit, I don't know if you ever remember, you're probably too young, back in the day, before all the phones had cameras, there was a little thing called a flip camera. And I had a little flip camera that popped up with a USB port, would go download right into but I did a little video with a fellow who sat right there. And I said, well, tell me your experience at the barn. And he said, I've been thinking about it today. I've been coming here every week for 5 years, and there are men that I could call at 3 a.m. to help me, and they would come. And he said, I'm not sure why that stirs my emotion, but he said, and I know these men, I love them. They would come from me, and I don't know where they go to church, and I don't know what they do for a living, because that's not what we talk about.
Right.
And I thought, wow, that's very cool. So,
wow.
So I've been on this journey, and it's revolutionized my spiritual journey, because it's taking me from a performance-based, I mean, in sports, we all grew up, hey, if you score the touchdown, if you clean your room, if you make good grades, if you do these things, then you get the reward, you get the applause.
Yeah.
From men, from your pastor, from your mama, from your wife. But it shifted me towards not what I do, but who I am, the whole issue. And you hear it a lot. And
yeah.
So I love what's going on in the body of Christ. I'm seeing a lot of vulnerability, and at the core of a lot of the discussion is identity. Do you know who you are?
Yeah, yeah.
And our whole lives, especially in the Western culture, who we are was defined by what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a guy, a businessman I know that loves Jesus. He stood on the porch first time he came. He immediately asked like 3 guys, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And I thought, you keep coming back, you'll stop asking that, because as my friend Robin Eckert, who's a barn brother and a counselor in the Grace Life ministry, he says, we're human beings. We're not human doings.
Oh,
that's good, man.
Yeah, that's so good. I love Robin too. I love how you brought him up, because he was probably the first person I sat down with before I came here, and shared, my testimony, shared a little bit of my story, just so he'd know who I was. And I knew before I even came here that like what was going to happen here was going to be already like within my wheelhouse of what I wanted to be a part of. But no, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think I love how you guys always say it, that, it's not so important about what a man does, but what his story is.
Yeah.
And I think that has been so absent even in my upbringing of like realizing that like, it was always, hey, how you doing? So what do you do for a living? Yeah. That was almost the focal point of every conversation. It started with what I do for a living, and it kind of went from there. And if we kind of hit it off, it was based on what I do and what you do. Yeah. But it was never really about like who I am as a person. But I think one of the biggest challenges is that most people, if you were to ask, well, no, not what do you do? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
They would like freeze up and say, I mean, I told you what I do. And they wouldn't really know how to answer that question, because that question requires them to sit with themselves outside of like what they've been doing to perform for so long.
That's good. We show a lot of movie clips at the barn because we feel like it gives men a visual of a truth. And Jesus, as we all know, if you've been around the Bible a while, Jesus told these stories called parables. Mm-hmm. Where there was a guy traveling down the road, and they jumped on him. The robbers, they robbed him. They beat him up, and the priest came by, and the Levite came by, and then the Samaritan. And they don't unpack it in this Bible story, but the half-breed, the hated ones of the Jews, he's the one that stopped. Those stories, and I've told Pastor Kelvin Smith at Steel Creek, he's probably given some great sermons, and most of them I can't remember the three big points, but I remember the stories that were in those sermons that illustrated what he was trying to say. So Barnes saying number one, we have a bunch of sayings, Robert, and number one I think would be, you don't know a man until you know his story. Yeah. And I have the honor of, I run a small business, but I'm pretty flexible, and I have coffee and breakfast a lot with guys, and with new guys, I sit down and say, okay, well, tell me your life story. And they go, well, that'll take a while. And I go, I've got time. It's hard for a salesman or someone that, even a Christian, we talk a lot more than we listen. And it's a great challenge for me. I'm sure I came out of the womb talking. I don't know how much you learn by talking. But it's interesting to hear stories, and we do a lot of sharing, and we have at the barn, typically on a Tuesday night, we we'll maybe do a video series. We do continue to do the Wild at Heart series, Fathered by God. There are a lot of great content out there, maybe a 15 or 20-minute video. Then we break into groups
Right.
for usually about an hour and let guys share. And we always tell the leaders, hey, ask a question, be quiet, let guys talk. And it's a challenge. Anybody that's listening that's ever been involved in small group dynamics, it's a crazy thing. It's like, okay, make sure everybody gets to talk.
Yeah.
Don't let Fred dominate.
Yeah.
And we have and this may offend some, and I don't care, but we have this thing called the Bible Answer Man, because sometimes a guy's pouring out his heart that his wife has left him or he's had a tragedy, and Bible Answer Man often jumps in and gives them, hey, here's 2 Bible verses. Take these 2, call me in the morning, tell me if you feel better. It's like, dude. And we've all seen the iceberg. Okay, he just gave you the tip of the iceberg.
For sure.
If you've ever seen that picture of the water line, there's this massive thing below the water line.
Yeah.
I mean, I had breakfast with a guy last Friday, and I've known him for a few years. And we were just unpacking some stuff, and he loves sports. He played sports, and he told me, he said, my dad never ever came to one of my games. He would drop me off at practice and leave. He would drop me off at games and not stay. And we were talking, and I said, we can't give what we didn't get. And I wonder what was, I asked him what was, instead of just saying, oh, well, that sucks. I said, well, I wonder where that was. And so he started going back and telling me about his dad's dad and what was going on with his dad.
Yeah.
Not an excuse, but an understanding of,
right.
Of here's why my dad was that way.
Right.
And part of the journey I've been on over the years is it feels like in Christianity, a lot of times it boils down to a list of rules, and the Bible's full of great principles.
Right.
But we don't often ask, okay, that's right, that's wrong, and oh, sweet Jesus, that's wrong, don't do that. But we rarely say, well, why do we say don't do that? We rarely say, why do you think you're drawn to that?
Yes.
The why.
Yeah.
I was walking my dog a couple of years. We have actually 2 golden retrievers. I think I just had one of them on the leash at the time, but I remember where I was in front of my neighbor's house listening to a podcast by Morgan Snyder, who's connected with the John Eldridge Wild at Heart team. And he had a guest on a podcast, and the guest said there's an Irish proverb that says, you speak often of my drinking, as in alcohol. You speak often of my drinking, but never of my thirst. And I stopped, got out my iPhone, wrote that down. I said, wow, we've boiled Christianity down, I think, a lot of us, to do this, and don't do that, versus what is it that, what is that thirst in you? And we talk a lot, I don't mind saying it, we talk a lot about the sexual part of life here at the barn, because so many men have been screwed up by that. And I often share, I said, you know what, you were created, you have a hunger and a thirst from God to connect with a woman.
Right.
So why would we ever be surprised that the counterfeit version of that thing?
Yeah.
That's where pornography comes in. There's a powerful, it's like, dude, oh, that woman on the video or in the magazine, she's never turned me down.
Right.
Oh, I think my secretary, she always laughs at my jokes. My wife, not so much.
Right.
I think I married the wrong woman. So we're going for this fellow named Jack Frost, the late great Jack Frost, does some great teaching on identity, and he talks about the counterfeit affection. So we're all looking for the love of the Father.
Right.
And we look for it, it shows up, the counterfeit version. And that's helped me, because when I look at my own journey, my own struggles, and other people, I'm thinking there's a reason to look at someone doing bad stuff and just to say, oh, that's bad. Okay, great. So what's going on in his heart that's causing him to drink? He's thirsty, and he's drinking out of that dirty well. And what's going on? So that's an exciting thing about the journey here. And I see it, what you're doing, I see it in, not enough, but I see it in a number of churches where men's groups are getting, it's like, dude, we're going beyond who can memorize the most Bible verses.
For sure. Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I would contend, you can tell me I've memorized the Bible. And if you have, I'd say good for you. But if you're walking alone, and if you don't have men that you can say, dude, I love Jesus, but my life sucks right now. I don't know what to do with my wife. Hadn't had a kiss in a month or a year. Don't know what to do with my teenage kids. I'm about to lose my house and I'm too ashamed to even say anything about it. I need help, but I'm too proud to ask for help.
Yeah.
To me, that's where the gold is, when men are can find a brotherhood. And we have some guys come here. We had a guy came last week from central Pennsylvania. He drove down to see some friends, and part of the reason he came was to see the barn. He said, I want to reach men, and he's near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I want to see what you guys are doing. And I've told guys, I said, don't get barn envy. This is a very cool, I think this is a holy, anointed place.
Right.
But for whoever's listening, it may be you and 4 guys at Panera Bread.
Yeah,
for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I am seeing men. We've got friends in Idaho and Alabama and Franklin, Tennessee that actually meet in barns. So that's kind of crazy.
Right.
But it's not about the place. It's about men being willing to walk with other men and to be vulnerable and to be real.
Yeah.
So that's the journey. And I'm excited because we live, in my opinion, primarily in a godless country. There are a lot of Christians, but as far as the nation, we're all trying to be salt and light. So I'm not encouraged. I'm not politically for our nation, but I am encouraged because I see popping up all over the place in podcasts like you're doing, and other places where men are saying, you know what, it's time for the brethren to get real.
Yeah.
And confess your sins one to another and pray for one another.
Yeah.
As James says, that you might be healed. We can memorize that verse. I told my pastor once, are we going to memorize it or are we going to do it?
Yeah.
Because I can go toe to toe. I'll run out eventually, but I know a lot of scripture verses, and I'm glad I do.
For sure.
They're powerful in my life. But if we're not walking it out, I love one of our barn verses is the end of 1 Corinthians chapter 16, right in the last chapter of 1 Corinthians, right in the middle. It says, be on the alert, stand firm in the faith, be strong, be men of courage, and do everything in love. It's like, whoa, that's a powerful word. And for me, I'm rambling. There's a guy, Perry Tuttle, you're probably too young for Perry. Perry was on the cover of Sports Illustrated in 1981 when Clemson won the national championship. Lives in Charlotte, loves Jesus. And I was talking to him once. He goes to a great Bible preaching church, and he said something, and he said, if I hear another sermon, I'm going to throw up. I said, and he was an elder at his church, big happening church in Charlotte. The people from Charlotte would know it if I named it. And I said, so Perry, you don't want to hear another sermon. You want to see one, don't you? He said, yeah, I want to see one. And I'm not against the preaching of the word of God. That's important.
Yeah, no, it is. But I kind of understand that, in that it's one thing to hear the word all the time, to hear great sermons, but to actually see people living it out is almost like refreshing, to realize like, oh, we're not just talking about it anymore. We're not just hearing that like, oh yeah, and then leaving out of there and just kind of like going back to our regular lives of like what we've been doing. It's, how do I walk this out?
Yeah.
How does this look in my life right now? How can I apply this and actually, I say it all the time. It's one thing to hear men say, oh, let's be vulnerable, but there are very few men actually showing you how that looks so you can begin to do that, or showing you how it looks to find community amongst brothers and be able to step in, and we all sit there and like, okay, who's going to go first? Like, I heard this thing is really powerful if we come together, but like, who wants to like take the first spin on like talking about it? Because that's always the really interesting thing of like, I don't know you guys, so is it safe because my life has never been safe. Like the one person I live with has never been safe for me to say this. So how safe is this for me to be able to live out what I've been hearing through all these sermons? Or am I just going every Sunday to hear a sermon that's like, oh, it's great?
Yeah. Man, you teed something up for me, brother. There's the late, great Reggie Campbell is a guy from Atlanta that had a ministry called Radical Mentoring.
Radical Mentoring.
We've got a book right over here called What Radical Husbands Do. And Reggie had a, I won't say a formula, but he had a system of discipling younger men. And I got an email from him once. I was just on a weekly blast. And the subject line said, I do not hold my friends accountable, ... And I went, okay, Reggie, you got me. I got to open this email, because that was unusual, because he was kind of Mr. Accountability. And that's important. But when I clicked on the email, it said, I do not hold my friends accountable. I hold them close. And he went on to open that up and say, you know what? For me to feel safe, for me to really be accountable to you, I need to know you. And out of that intimacy that we have, which won't happen tonight, it takes time.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I've been in men's meetings in churches, I've led them, where at the end of the night we say, hey, find somebody you don't know. Okay, yeah, give them your phone number. So text them on Wednesday and ask them if they've been looking at porn. It's like, dude, I mean, I'm old, I don't care. I'd probably do it. But I think generally, particularly when I was younger, it's like, dude, I don't know this guy.
Right.
I'm going to tell him, how deep am I going with a guy that I don't really know?
Right.
So I think that's, you know, if guys are watching this looking for a good quote, I think that's one of my best ones that I'm aware of. I love the, you speak often of my drinking, but never of my thirst. But I love the, I don't hold my friends accountable. I hold them close. And I think that's, for me, it's been very, very powerful. And it just speaks to the, you know what, we all want a formula. We do. I think all humans, Christian, spiritual or not, are drawn to the law. It's like, wife, just tell me what to do. Coach, tell me what to do. Pastor, oh, I'll volunteer for everything. Just tell me what to do so I can earn my way into the Father's heart, into the heart of love, into acceptance. Just tell me what to do. And God says, you know what? You're my beloved son. I've written a calling on your heart to walk out, and, you know, on your worst day, I'm crazy about you. That's the message God has to us, and that he would want us to give to the people in our lives. But I think we all fight it because we all grew up performing.
For sure.
I mean, when I came to Jesus at the end of my junior year in college, it wasn't long before I thought this is a good year for God, because Haines Maxwell is on the scene to help him out. Wow. Really? Wow. I mean, if I'm honest, I'm thinking, hey, I've been successful. I've been a leader, and I've just joined, I'm in the Christian club now, and let's go, man. Let's go.
Yeah. I'm on God's top producer list right now. Like, he's really proud of me for all I've done.
That's right. I love that. And everything was working pretty well in my life. And when I failed and went through a divorce, there was something, and I don't recommend that to anybody, but the devastation of that and the failure and somewhat of the shame, and it brought me to a place where it's like, crap, everything was working pretty well. Except with the woman who knew me best. And part of it was, and I shared a little bit earlier, I was trying to get my identity from my wife. We had a buddy who's been coming here about 3 years. And a few months ago, he sat down with me. He said, Haines Maxwell, you say a lot. Don't let your wife fill out your report card. And he said, I just figured, the light bulb came on for me last week. My first marriage failed because I was trying to win the approval and the affection, not just sexual, but every way a man and a woman are made to connect. I was trying to get something from her that told me I was the man.
Yeah.
And I'll let her fill out my report card.
Right.
John Eldredge said, if you give a woman the power to validate you, you also give her the power to destroy you. It's like, whoa, dude.
Right.
So he told me, and then he said, and I'm doing it in my second marriage, I'm doing the same thing. And God is showing me that my identity comes from him so that I have a strength to offer my beauty.
Right.
Not if you'll give me and to long to be loved and to receive affection and all the beautiful things that marriage can be. To long for that is right and born from God. But to demand that, or to say, I really need you to come through for me so that I feel like a man.
Yeah.
To get my identity from my wife. My first wife, and I mean, I'm a pretty open book at this point in my life. I'm heading down the home stretch. I'm about halfway to 138 years old on my birthday recently, and I may be here 20 more years or 20 more minutes. And I've been so blessed, have great kids, grandkids, and if the doctor said, hey, you got a week to live, I'm sure there would be some human fear.
Right.
But overall, when I'm sitting here and I'm healthy, I'm thinking, you know what? I've seen this broken world. I've been loved. I've had a chance to love, and I'm eternal. And there's this life, and then there's eternity, and I've seen enough. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
But it's just been a blessing. So here's where I was going. My mind goes all over the place. My first wife looked at me at one point and she said, you know what you really need? You need a maid and a prostitute. And I've said that before, and this isn't very kind, but I've said in front of guys, I remember thinking, wow, that would be great. But the sad thing is my heart was at a place where that was really true. I was looking, because there's a Eldridge and Brent Curtis wrote in The Sacred Romance. And this is crazy to me, but I think it's true. They said that sexual intercourse is the most physical picture in this life of a heavenly reality of being loved, of being received, of entering into life with strength. Can I get a witness? I mean, there's this beautiful picture of intimacy and connection and being loved, being received by God, that we see that in the physical. So no wonder the counterfeit version of that. I mean, men have fought duels in wars over women. And there's a piece in Wild at Heart where John Eldredge says, there's something that haunts us. If I can just get Eve back, if I can just get Eve in the Garden of Eden, I will get something back that I have lost as a man. And that's not true. It feels true.
Yeah.
But God would say, you know what? You're my beloved son. You're my warrior. I have a mission for you to love, to be loved, to impact the world. You're starting with the people closest to you. And that's your calling. And that's where you get your identity. You don't get it from the woman or the fake woman.
Yeah.
I mean, we had in this room next door, we've had so many stories. We had a guy that said, I've been in youth ministry 20 years. And tonight I realized why pornography has been a battle for me. He said, because it gives me a sense of connecting with a woman, which I'm made to do. Then he said, but it requires nothing of me. And all the guys went, oh, busted, man.
Oh my goodness.
Because if you want, and it's not just sexual, but if you want to connect with a woman, dude, you better be bringing something to the table. You better be bringing your heart and your strength to that woman, offering that to her and affirming her beauty or her femininity. And Reggie Campbell was on a podcast once. He said, guys, if you're doing chores around the house because you're thinking you might get laid. Those were his exact words. I said, dude, I love this guy. He said, that's not it. You are called to serve, but your service is only going to really come out of, you know what? I know who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm able to serve the people in my world out of a strength, not because of what I hope I might get back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might just be a pat on your back.
Right. You know, it's funny when you say that, I sit here and I think about how, like, for the longest, I never really understood, like, what this love thing was all about. Like, how does this work? And I felt like it was, like, as you're describing, very transactional.
Yeah.
If I do this, then you do this. And if I get this right, then you'll love me.
Right.
And if I show up, then you'll love me more. And maybe that will lead to, like, the highest level of intimacy that I know of, which is physical intimacy.
Yeah, sure.
I thought that was the most important thing, only to realize when it all fell apart that the way I truly understood and realized what love was when I began to receive love from my Heavenly Father. And the fact that there was nothing I could do to make him fall back from me or love me less or love me more. He loved me 100%. And I thought to myself, but wait, have you seen all the stuff I've done? Like, have you seen all this crap I've done? Like, before you begin to tell me how much you love me, have you seen this? And to realize that he loved me no matter what, like, he loved me even in the mess.
Yeah.
I realized that he was calling me, and it clearly says it in the Bible, calling me to love others the way he loved me.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, so it doesn't matter if they don't show up the way you need them to show up or provide you what you need. Like, I still want you to love them the same way I love you.
Yeah.
And that began to reframe how I saw love and how I gave love, even if others didn't see it that way, which was the hard part of, like, realizing that I've never seen love from a non-transactional space growing up.
Yep.
It was, like you said, it was always performance based. It was always what I've done, what I'm going to do if I show up. To realize that I could love somebody. I think one of the biggest stories that I hear and I love to talk about is how the fact that before Jesus did a thing, before he did any miracles, before he showed up on the scene and did anything that was to some people a miraculous work, his father let him know that this is my son in whom I well please.
Yeah.
Wait, he hasn't done anything yet, and I'm well pleased with him. And he's well pleased with us the same way.
Yeah.
In spite of, like, okay, well, I've done a lot already and it's really messy, and I love you and I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeking from so many people. Like, I want to hear from my father, I love you and I'm proud of you. I want to hear from my wife, I love you and I'm proud of you. Well, wait, I haven't done anything. No, I know. And I love you and I'm proud of you. I want to be able to tell my son, I love you and I'm proud of you. Yeah. Even though right now you're not really proud of yourself. You're having a hard time loving yourself the way you see yourself. But when I let you know that I love you and I'm proud of you, it changes the fact of, so if I don't ever do good, do you still love? Yes, I still love you and I'm proud of you. And that takes out I guess I don't have to keep trying to perform for your love. I'm going to receive it anyway.
Yeah.
And that began to change everything for me, even in how I address my marriage, because, like you, I was headed for divorce. Yeah. And I didn't see a way to want to be back in this if I was going to have to keep living based on, like, well, she's not doing this for me. Well, she's not showing up the way for me. And I'm sure she probably could have said the same thing to me. What you need is a cook, you need a maid, and you need a prostitute. But the truth is that I was expecting her to show up that way because of all I've done. Like, I go out to work, I bring home, I protect, and I protect you guys, and I provide. Like, that's all I felt like I was supposed to do. Yeah. And I limit my life and my identity to just protecting and providing. And my identity was just, I got to just protect and provide, and never truly understood what like, I was just scratching the surface on what God had called me to do. But because I had looked to my like, as you said earlier, I looked to my grandfather. Yeah. I looked to, like, other men in my life, and I said, okay, well, like they look like they're pretty successful because of like just protecting and providing. So like I'm gonna run that back.
Yeah.
And never truly sought God to understand like what more did he have for me? What more did he want me to do to lead my family? And so I fell miserably because I was running the wrong play.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I certainly can't speak for my first wife, and I hate that that's even in my vocabulary, first wife. I do hate it. Two thoughts there. One, for me, I can just speak for myself. I wasn't loving. I was trading. I was trading. You do this, I'll do that. You get this.
Yeah.
And I would say this to people listening. There are some men, I'm sure, that will at some point stumble on this thinking, I've tried. Whatever I do, it's not enough. Think I married the wrong woman. I can't try anymore. We've been to counseling. For me, I believe if I had known 25 years ago what I know now,
yeah,
about God, about myself, and a little bit about women, I'm absolutely sure that my first marriage could have not only made it, but could have been good.
Right.
Because I've told a few guys, and I had one guy circle back with me a year or two later. He said, I didn't want to hear someone say, hey, take one for the home team, make Jesus proud. Sleep in another bedroom for the next 20 years and then die.
Come on.
Is that the plan?
Come on.
Is that the plan? Is that God's plan? No, that's not good.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you told me it could have been good because we're human. Nobody wants to say, okay, I'm committed. But I believe when men enter in with strength to the hearts of their wife. In fact, 25 years ago, if someone had said, what does it look like for you to pursue the heart of your wife? I'd have said, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Nobody's talking about it. I love your wife, respect your husband. We hear a lot of principles from the pulpit, but what does it look like to really pursue the heart of your wife and engage with her and say, you know what? I may not get the response I'm longing for tonight, next weekend, or the rest of the year. That's not what it's about. God is enough for me. And you shared, and I'm sure there are probably one or two people going, okay, you heard the Father, you experienced the love of the Father. Whoa, wow. And I believe the scriptures are the inspired word of God. And there's so many great words in there. And there's our spirit bears witness with God's spirit. There's a that we are the sons of God. There's a spiritual thing, and yet for me, they might burn me at the stake in some churches, but even as important, maybe more importantly, is God shows up in my life every day.
Yeah.
All dressed up, looking like Lane Buckner and Scott Fraser and John Somjack and Roger King and Rob Suter and Dennis Yon and Matt Thomas and Michael Howe. I mean, there are men in my life that show me the love of the Father. And that's why I think it's so crucial.
So good.
I had a pastor once said, well, it's all about you and God. I said, yeah. And I'm thinking when it was all about God and Adam, God said, you know what? It's not good that you're alone. I'm not alone. I have you. Yeah.
Right.
So
good.
Right. There's this.
Yeah.
And there's this.
Yeah.
And the expression of God comes, I think it's most tangible when we experience the love of God from other people. We had a guy show up years ago here in the barn, and he was awaiting sentencing. He had defrauded a bunch of Christian friends and family and pastors as a stockbroker kind of a deal. Things went bad. He started falsifying the statements of the clients that invested money because some trades went bad. And he was thinking, if I can just hit a home run with some big deals, get all the money, put it back in everyone's account,
right.
No harm, no foul.
Right.
Well, it got into a multi-million-dollar hole. He turned himself in. He showed up at church, his other church, all the people he'd messed up. they ran him off. He showed up at Steel Creek and stood up there in front of 1,000 people that he didn't know and told that story. And I was just happened to be in the lobby that day with a table just doing some men stuff, and he came up and I invited him to the barn. I invited him to stuff we were doing at church, and he started coming, and it was a great picture of and not busting on the people that were mad at him, but there's a group of people that ran away from him. And there was a new group of people that said, you know what? You screwed up, and we're going to run towards you. I believe John Lynch, and might have been The Cure or one of his talks, he says, what if there were a place where when people found out the worst about you,
yeah,
they wouldn't run away.
Yeah.
They would run toward you.
Yeah.
It's like, man, there's good news. Healing the brokenhearted, setting the captives free, proclaiming good news. In Isaiah, Jesus said, I didn't come to give you a bunch of rules for better living.
Yeah.
He opened the scroll and said, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, to set the captives free. He handed the scroll back to the dude and said, basically said, this is why I came.
Yeah.
And I think he says to us, and this is why you're here. You're not here to dispense wisdom. And I'd get kicked out of a lot of churches. I don't think the Bible is the owner's manual for life. It's got a lot of good things in there, but I think it's the revelation of who God is, who we are, and who we're called to do, and how we're called to impact the world. And Jesus said, hey, this is why I came, to heal the brokenhearted, to set the captives free. And he left and said, how crazy. And John, this is crazy if I can't get my head around it. I'm in the Father, the Father's in me, the presence of God is in you. But Jesus says, you know what? There's salt and light, and the mission is not to go tell everybody, here's the rules called the Bible, try real hard to do it.
Yeah.
That's not the plan.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. It's never worked. It's a renovation of the heart. We talk sometimes at the barn. So what do you do at the barn? I said, well, we do heart surgery with no anesthesia. And we're trying to, it's painful. And back to that, and accountability. I hold my friends close. If I have that intimate connection with someone, and now because I know who I am, I can step in my most intimate relationship with my wife. I can step in usually with my first wife and other people, bosses. It's like when I saw the smoke coming out of their ears, I thought, you know what? Let me just take a few steps back. It feels safer from a distance. And sadly, many men are great avoiders of conflict, and that reinforces in their wife, who may never say it, but deep down she says, you know what? My experience with my uncle and my first boyfriend and the babysitter. My experience with those men communicated, I don't really want you. I want what you can do for me. So if I'm not performing for my husband and he withdraws, same tune, just different guy, do they really want me? And it's like, and as a human, I cannot pursue the heart of my wife. We have this kind of joke that I take credit for this, the international sign of women. It's like one hand is going, get away. The other hand saying, come here. It's like, dude, make up your mind. I want this. At least if you did this, it'd be clear. But you're like saying, yes, no, yes, no. And I had a great picture for me from the Father. I was having an argument with my wife, and we don't argue very often, but years ago we were having this argument, Robert, and I got very aggressive verbally, and it's like, yeah, and this and that, and I can't believe, and how stupid are you? I don't think I said that, but I communicated that. And she suddenly got, and I crushed her. I won the argument, and she suddenly got teary-eyed.
Right.
She just held up her hand, which meant, don't come after me. And she went up the stairs, went up to the bedroom, and shut the door. So I'm down in the kitchen going, well done, Haines. You just crushed your wife. And I'm looking at the couch. I'm thinking, wonder if there's a game on tonight. I'll just watch ESPN or something. And I felt like the Lord said, you big weenie, go up there. Oh, so I went up the stairs. The door was shut. I was kind of hoping it was locked. It's like, well, Lord, I tried. The door was locked. I couldn't get in.
Right.
And I felt like the Lord said, hey, you big weenie, open the door. So I went in. My wife was she was kind of lying on the bed, and she was weeping, just kind of finishing up. And I went up, and she kind of sat up, and I just looked at her. And I said, I am so sorry that it was more important for me to be right than to love you.
Yeah.
And first of all, if I didn't have a sense of who I was, I wasn't going up those stairs to face the machine gun.
For sure.
Like, let's just let it cool off.
Right.
It'll be better tomorrow.
Right.
And maybe in a week, we'll just pretend it never happened. Yay. And then we'll have sex. No, we probably won't. But anyway, we can hope. So we're standing there in the bedroom, and I said, I'm so sorry. It was more important for me to be right than to love you. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, no one has ever come after my heart, ever in my whole life, like you just did. And did that make everything instantly better? Nah, because if you've had those emotional, even a counseling session, right, it's like, oh, we were raw, man. It was like, oh, we were both feeling raw in our heart because we just been digging into some stuff. And I would say to any men listening that I believe women, and I got this from Dan Allender and Larry Crabb, Christian psychiatrists, counselors, they said men are primarily made to initiate, women are primarily made to respond. They both do both.
Yeah.
But if you had to do it a 51-49, and I believe when men respond with strength and move into their women's life, not because I hope this turns out well for me. It's like, you know what? I'm committed to you, period.
Yeah.
And my strength doesn't come from your validation. It comes from God. So I have something to give you.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, you can have a wife and another wife and another wife and another wife. It'll be exciting at first. It will be, but it's all going to end up the same because you're going to be looking for her or your sports team or your business. There are some marriages, you know this, where I've seen people my parents' age where it's like, I see them and I'm thinking, have y'all even kissed each other in 50 years? Because you're doing your thing, you're doing your thing. Mm-hmm. We got the big house, we got this life. But a pretty big revelation for me, Robert, has been that Ecclesiastes, God has put eternity in our hearts. And what I'm beginning to believe more and more is every human that's ever breathed, I don't care what they believe, God has breathed into them. There's a longing to connect with eternity, to connect with something that transcends this life, that's bigger, a bigger story, Eldridge calls it, the larger story. And so what happens is, maybe the marriage doesn't break up, but maybe there's this quiet desperation of, we're not connected, but I'm going to find that transcendent experience in my sports team. I mean, I know Christian men. Yeah. I know Christian men that travel the country in their boosters and they give money, and it seems to me they're finding a lot of, and too much, I would say, of their identity in their team.
Facts.
Or their business.
Yeah.
I know a young guy with a spectacularly beautiful wife and children, and their marriage is blowing up. And when I'm around him, I'm thinking, you're an entrepreneur, and that's not a bad thing. And I'll bet your wife says that's more important to him than me.
Facts.
And he's thinking, dude, I'm bringing home the money. Look at, I just got your new minivan. And I think, and it can be ministry. It can be your podcast.
Yeah.
It can be my barn. And it's not my barn.
Right.
It's like I'm looking for something that takes me out of this crazy thing.
And I can't figure out.
Yeah.
I can't.
The youth pastor, we had another guy that was a senior pastor for over 20 years. He walked up, been to the barn a couple times, and he stood up, real mild-mannered guy. And he said, can I say something? Of course. He said, I thought I would go to my grave and never tell a soul what I'm about to tell you guys. Wow. And it's no big surprise. He said, I've battled with pornography my whole ministry. And he said, and I want to be free. I want to be free. And the men in the room thought, dude, brother, you just took a giant step. Confess your sins one to another. See, the stuff I do in darkness, obviously it doesn't bother me very much that God knows. Theoretically, I know God knows, but I don't want you to know. I don't want so that's I think God put that in there in James. Hey, confess your sins to the Father. Yeah, oh Lord, I don't want to tell you. I saw a T-shirt out in Montana 2 years ago on vacation, big bold letters. I'm in the apparel business. I'm going to print some of these. It said, I am the one. It said, I am the one that Jesus left the 99 for. And
Sheesh.
Yeah.
That's heavy. And not only did he leave the 99, but he calls us to do the same when some of our brothers go missing. I was just listening to something the other day about how Jesus showed us what it looks like to leave the 99, to go after us, to pursue our hearts, to continue to call us to him, which was our first calling. You know, people always talk about calling. What is my calling? And I recognize, I'm trying to remember or cite my source, but somebody was like, your first calling was when God called you closer to him, when God called you to him, when God began to show you what it looks like to run after him, and then to run after your own heart. Because as we've all heard, we are called to guard our hearts, because everything we do flows from it. And because we are freely giving our hearts to everything, a lot of times our hearts are in the hands of, as you said earlier, so many people that can just throw our heart down and stomp on it when they don't feel like we're giving them what they need. When we're simply looking for validation from them. But a lot of times our validation should have started coming from the Creator, the one who created us, knew us, knitted us in our parents' womb, knew us before our parents knew us. But as you said, it's a lot of times we don't find that until we come around other brothers who can encourage us and let us know who they see, even when we don't see it. Like, I don't see that.
Well, and you kind of painted a picture earlier, and I've had a few people say, so how do you guys get so real at the barn? How do you create that environment? And you know what? It's not just me. Sometimes it's been me, it's been Kevin, it's been other men. But I said, my experience is it just takes one man to say, you know what? I love Jesus, but my life sucks right now. And let me tell you what I'm struggling with. But sadly, from the pulpits, often, and God bless the pastors, what a job. God bless them. Bless them, Jesus.
Yeah.
I don't hear very often. I usually, if I hear struggles from the pulpit, it's like, well, and then I read these scriptures, and by Thursday I was good.
Wow. As if it's like almost like a quick 30-minute steps.
It ain't working for me, Pastor. So it's like, it must be something wrong with me. I'm just pretend. Years ago, we did the Wild at Heart series at a church, and episode 2 is called The Poser. And there was a guy, Dave Shira. He was a bouncer. He owned bars, used to live his life up and down South Boulevard in Charlotte, North Carolina, just raising hell. And he looked at me and the group. He said, you know where the biggest posers are? We said, where, Dave? He said, the church. We put on our church mask. God's good.
Come on.
God's good. And you say,
all the time.
Yes, hallelujah. I want to run off with my secretary, and I want to kill my teenager. And I'm about to lose my house.
For sure.
But everything's fine. No, dude. There was a time in a time during my first marriage where we had a big financial struggle. Our biggest customer declared bankruptcy and about took our family business down the tubes with them. And at one point, and I sort of like, okay, positive mental attitude. And sometime later, maybe a year later, my wife had said, you know, I would have felt more secure if you'd have said, things really stink right now, and I don't know how we're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
What we're going to do. She said, because that's what was true.
Right.
You pretending everything was great when everything wasn't great.
But let me guess, your thought was that she can't handle that truth.
Right.
That's how a lot of us begin to think. Like, I don't want to scare them off or make them think that I don't have it under control, because my number one job is to make them think that I have it all under control.
So I'm telling myself I'm protecting her, but I'm really protecting me, because if I tell the truth, I don't want her to come back at me and say, wow, this is not what I signed up for. I thought you were going to provide for us.
That's good. Yeah, that's real.
So yeah, it's funny. I think it was Zig Ziglar or somebody, the motivational guy. It's like, hey, you point a finger at somebody else, you got these bad boys coming right back at you.
Yeah.
You got three coming. I don't know what the thumb's doing, but you got three coming back back at you with the tragedies. And I'll go on record as saying this. We're right now, at the time we're filming this, just a few days ago, the hurricane, the waters. Someone today said it was 1,000, not 100 years, 1,000-year high of the water that has devastated much of western North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make light of that, but yesterday my wife and a friend of hers were driving to a little seminar thing, and I said, I believe God is telling me that the greatest revival in the history of America. That's what I felt. You can check in a few years and I'll see if that was true or not. But I felt like there's going to be a great revival coming out of this tragedy, because Christians and non-Christians by the tens of thousands woke up the next day and went, holy mackerel, everything I thought I could count on. My house.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
All my stuff.
Yep.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Loved ones. They're gone. I don't know what the death toll will be, much higher than we know.
Right.
And I believe, and I think for me, at having a marriage crash and burn, it's like, okay, all right, I've lost everything of value.
Yeah.
Really, that was important. So what do we do now?
Yeah.
And I think God specializes, and you've had stories on your podcast. There are so many stories out there in the world of people where, you know what, I lost everything but God.
Yeah.
I was Psalm 40. I was in a terrible place. I was in a pit, but you reached down and put my feet on a solid rock. Praise to my God. You did it. Gordon Dalby, who wrote a book called Healing the Masculine Soul, has become a friend of the barn. We've Zoomed him in a couple times over the years, and he says sometimes a man falls in a hole that's so deep he cannot get out by himself. He can't. I mean, picture a deep hole. And I added to it, sometimes we jump in there.
Yeah,
but
there it is.
Sometimes we stumble in. Sometimes we may feel like we got pushed in. But sometimes we're in a hole, however we got there, that I can't get out unless somebody helps me. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty, the vulnerability, the thing you talk about in your podcast, the thing we try and talk about here at the barn is, you know, what's true, and you need men. You're in a battle. Yeah. And don't fight alone. Yeah. I think that's maybe the first barn saying is you don't know man till you know his story. The last one is we're at war. Yeah. And do not fight alone. It doesn't turn out well. No. And you've got to have men you're willing. You don't need 50 guys at a barn, but you need at least one guy. Yeah. That you can say, dude, I love my wife, but this chick at work is driving me crazy. Yeah. Well, let me tell you, brothers, I have had that exact conversation before in my life, and just the speaking of it, there's something I can't explain.
Bringing it to the light. I always say it. You got to bring it out into the light.
Right. There's the best disinfectant is sunlight. There's a spiritual truth that when I get it, because when I keep it in, I remember a pastor once told me they had a bunch of people go on a mission trip to Israel, and there was a married guy went without his wife. There was a married woman went without her husband. There was a group of them. Well, these two got together. And it's like, oh, Jesus brought us together. I married the wrong person. And he was like, are you kidding me? And I say that to say, left to ourselves. Yeah. If you were my brother and I told you that, you would smack me on the face and say, snap out of it, dude.
Yeah.
Really?
That was not God's plan.
You're going to blow up 2 families and,
Yeah.
and anybody that's involved in divorce.
Yeah.
There's a ripple effect,
Yeah.
affects so many people.
For sure.
You're going
For
to
sure.
blow that thing up.
For sure. And that's not, and that goes back to what you said earlier. And that's not to say just deal with it, just sit in it, just
Yeah.
let the storm go by, and eventually maybe in 20. No, it's more of like, God, where you? Because I still fully believe that as God has called us to be the leaders of the house, He's calling us to begin to do the work, even if nobody else will do it.
Yeah.
And that work sometimes looks like going to individual therapy. Sometimes it looks like finding men. It looks like finding someone that you can begin to share what you are holding on to inside, what you be, as you said earlier, what you believe nobody will ever know unless you share it.
Yeah.
Like there's some things it's like, oh, well, I mean, everybody knows that about me, but there's some things nobody will ever know unless you bring it out into the light with others.
Yeah.
And that's not, it doesn't make you a simp. It doesn't make you a corny or whatever name you'd put on that when it comes to like, oh man, that's what rats do. But no, that's what men who are tired of living out of that do.
Sometimes I've had a number of people dealing with marriage stuff because I end up, that's part of my story. And I think I've learned a few things from my failure. Primarily.
Yeah, for sure.
Guys say, well, she's not trying. It takes 2.
Yeah,
it takes 2.
yeah.
And it's like, yes, but all I can tell you now is forget about her. Guys show up at the barn.
Yeah.
They have that look. They have the look. So you're sleeping in a separate bedroom and your wife wants a divorce and and we don't have a real formula, but we usually say, dude, look at me, read my lips. It's not about her. It's not about your marriage. Right now, it's about you.
Yeah.
Walking in the strength. And you know what? I hate to say it. It may end up in divorce, but right now, it's not about you trying to fix your marriage or you telling us how she's not trying or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, it's about you connecting with God and connecting with brothers that, as Kevin Kasner would say, who's in your life that'll call BS on you?
Yeah.
Who loves you enough to say, I'm not buying that crap, man. Are you kidding me?
Right.
You trying that on me?
Right. Run that play.
I came up with that.
Yeah.
You're stealing my material, but I'm so passionate, and I know when we sat down to start talking, neither of us kind of knew where we were going, but I know I see so often, and I've lived it, many have, the pain and the heartache and the heartbreak of broken marriage and the family and the friends that I if I'll be pleased if one guy hears this and says, you know what, I'm not giving up. And I can't tell you it's not going to end in divorce. Right. I don't know.
Right, for sure.
But I know if you're a consumer and I've known men that married a second and a third time, and it's not funny, but sometimes it's like, dude, she kind of looks like your first wife.
Right.
And she looks like your second wife, the third one.
Right.
And they're going through the same thing, and it's in new relationships. Yeah, oh baby, they're exciting, and and then you get down to the real day in, day out. Yep. Honey, did you bounce a check? Ooh. Let's not talk about that.
To piggyback on what you're saying right now, though, I think that it's important, no matter how many times you get married or how many exciting moments you have of like, I'm going to recycle everything and just start over from scratch.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people miss the fact that you are the common denominator in all of those relationships. Right. And as you start to see the exact same patterns or the exact same results in the next relationship, it has nothing to do with, oh, well, man, I just got somebody that's too much like them. No, you're the same. You're carrying the same baggage into the next one. The same things that you need to deal with, the same things you need to face, the same things you need somebody to point out and say, brother, I see something that you keep overlooking. And maybe it's called a blind spot. Maybe it's called I've overlooked that. I didn't think that was the problem. But unless you have those people that can say, hey, look, man, you asked me to hold you accountable. Accountability isn't always beautiful. It's not always pleasure. Sometimes it hurts to have to tell you that it's you messing up. But it's the the denominator, the division to your equation that continues to result in the same results, the same answer, that's going to begin to change things. Even if the marriage doesn't work, you don't walk into the next relationship, whether it's with the next person you decide to marry, or just the next people that you have to live with, your siblings, your family, showing up the same way. The crazy thing about it is your family can't divorce you.
Right.
They would like to sometimes.
They're stuck with you.
Right. But the truth is they can't always point out where you're going wrong, nor do they care to, because they get a reprieve from you.
Yeah.
So I think that is why I love this space. I love this space. I love any space, because you shared a story that I've heard even from my mentor, Dan Horner, who said, hey, one time I went down to Colorado and I sat down and I went through a boot camp with John Eldridge, and I had to bring that back. And these are not just men who like woke up one day and were like, I wasn't doing anything and I saw something cool and so I decided to remake it. No, it was men who said, this is bigger than me.
Yeah.
God has put it on my heart that there are men who are starving and are thirsting for something bigger than what they've been quenching their thirst with.
Yeah.
They've been numbing themselves with everything they can get their hands on. But the truth is at the end of the day, they will never actually ever quench their thirst. They will just numb their life until their life ends if they keep going that road.
Yeah.
There comes a certain point where you have to say, I got to do something different. It's going to be uncomfortable because it's different. I don't know what to expect. So that's going to add more uncomfortable because it's the unknown. But I think when men step foot here on this ground, come to this barn, when men go to places like the Outpost and other different boot camps for men, different retreats, I pray that what they are seeing is a light that begins to shine into them through the other men who have walked that journey, who are on that path, and want those men to realize, oh yeah, there's more to this than just like, we're going to live with it. We're going to ignore it. We're going to come here, hide out as long as we can, and then go back and just wait till we can get back here again next Tuesday. I think it's saying, no, there's more to your story. Like there's more God has for you. There's more he wants to do in your marriage and your relationships. He wants to speak into your life, but he wants to do it through you. It's not about her. It's not about them. It's you. He wants to start with you. He called you first. He just doesn't want you to be passive like Adam was in the beginning. He wants you to actually lean into what he created you to do, which was lead. He knew that there was going to come a time where you were going to fall back. He's seen that in a lot of us, but there comes a point where he's saying, I need you to step forward. I need you to trust me with your story. I need you to allow me to continue to love on you so that you can realize that I know who you are. And it's not for them to validate and approve and speak life into you all the time. It's sometimes realizing that if you can't seek me and you're seeking them for the answers, then listen, that's where you went wrong anyway, because the truth is they're trying to find their own heart. They're trying to find their own identity. It's two people. And I hate to say this, but this was a big thing in my marriage. Two people with no identity outside of what we do. I'm a husband. You're a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a father. You're a mother. I work here. You work there. That's the extent of our identity. And so outside of that, we're just butting heads because we truly believe that, like, if I can do this for you and I can do this for them and I can show it for them, and I'm trying to, what do we call it, balanced life, and it never balances out. And it's like, okay, is this it? Like, is this it?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of men, you've seen them, they show up here and they're just like, bro, I realize what life looks like and this is it. So I figured I might as well come and hide out here for a little bit. Maybe I might find refuge here. Maybe I might be able to just hang out here so I can let the storm blow over, and then maybe I'll go back home and maybe she'll like me again if I let time heal it all.
Yeah.
And I've learned that recently I heard somebody say, time doesn't heal anything. Time just creates a ticking time bomb.
Yeah. Wow. So I would just encourage men, and I would say to the men, as you know, we probably need to wrap up here eventually. Got a bunch of guys. I'm expecting guys at the barn door. But to guys that maybe are stirred about their marriage, about dealing with the counterfeit affections, the pornography, all the different things, I I believe, and it may be a word, just words, but I believe the Spirit of God brings conviction. I believe the enemy brings shame.
Yeah.
The enemy will say, what you're doing is terrible and you suck and da-da-da-da, and oh, don't tell anybody, they'll kick you out. And that's so sad for pastors. I mean, it seems like not a month goes by in the world where there's some internationally esteemed minister of the gospel that's caught up in some sexual thing. And I'm thinking, and it doesn't surprise me, it breaks my heart, but I'm thinking, dude, who was in your foxhole that you were you so up on the pedestal of being Mr. Super Pastor, Mr. Super Evangelical guy, that there wasn't a man where you could say, dude, I keep running to this or that to make myself, who's in their life that they can, because I think there's absolute victory in the interaction with God and with others, and there's no victory, there's only ultimate defeat when men try and battle it by themselves
in isolation,
and the enemy comes in with shame. I mean, you guys do it in what you do with the Outpost, and it's like we watch the movie clips, and there's the guy, the soldier running through the jungle by himself. And we all know just wait 10 seconds, he's going to get shot, or he's going to fall, and one of those things is going to wrap around his foot and throw him up in the air. I mean, he's going to get booby trapped.
Right.
It's not going to end well. And so I would say to men, if you're dealing with any of that stuff, don't be ashamed. Realize that God made you, if it's a sexual thing, God made you to connect with women. So of course the counterfeit's going to get your attention. I mean, driving down the road, there's a billboard with a blonde chick selling Ford F-150 pickups. And I'm like, oh, mercy. Yes, Lord. Let me go buy a pickup. I wonder if she's there. I wonder if I could get her number.
Right.
Dude, come on, snap out of it.
Right.
But God made us to connect with women. So of course, and the enemy is so distorted sexuality, gender. John Eldredge said, a nation that is confused about gender is in its final days. He said, gender is the most core thing about who we are. God created them, man and woman, he created them. So I say all that to say, there's an all-out assault, and anybody paying attention knows it, on who we are as men, who we are as women, and for men to walk in strength that comes from God and the encouragement of my brothers. I would say to anybody listening, struggling with a relationship, that's your only chance. Your only chance is to walk in the reality of, this is who I am, and it's not about the response of the woman to me. Of course you want your wife to respond lovingly to you. Of course you do.
Right.
But your identity, you got to be real and say, how much of my identity? I mean, I was sitting in a chair once. The Tar Heels lost on Saturday. The Panthers lost on Sunday, last second interception. I'm sitting there thinking, oh, my life sucks. And I thought God started laughing at me, and he's like, really? So a bunch of 18-year-old running around in shorts that can dunk and a bunch of millionaires playing football, you're getting your identity from we won. What do you mean we won? I'm not on the team.
Right.
I don't own the team.
Right.
I don't have stock in the team. I don't have season tickets. But there's hey, we won. So there's that identity that's not unusual for men coming from sports, but we all get it from somewhere. And that's, if I could share one thing with one guy for 1 minute, I'd say, hey, before God, understand who you are and who you're called to be, because out of that strength, you'll go from being a consumer to you'll be a man with strength that you can offer to the people in your life. And that's what changes the world. That's what changes the world. Nothing else.
Yeah, no, that's real.
In my humble opinion. So I love what you're doing. I love what's happening across the world, across America, in my little view of the world, where men are getting real with other men.
Yeah.
I got too many stories. Years ago, a guy walked in that door over there. I was walking out. He was walking in. First timer. He stood at the threshold and he looked in, and the viewers can't see it, but we have in the other room, we got deer heads and swords and 101st Airborne and Navy and Air Force. We got all this man stuff. He stood at the threshold, and I literally ran into him, and he said, what is this place? And I had to come up with an answer. And what came out of my mouth, Robert, was I said, I guess you could say this is a place where men get real. And he got teary-eyed, and he shook his head, and he said, that's what I thought. Then he said, I didn't know a place like this existed.
Yeah.
We have a great quote, my last, and I'm going to shut up. We had Kevin or I found it on Facebook or somewhere years ago. And it said, a true friend is someone who knows the song of your heart and can sing it back to you when you have forgotten the words.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I don't know about the guys listening, but most men would say, I could use a few more like that.
Yeah.
You only have bandwidth for so many, but a lot of guys, I've asked guys, who's in your cell phone? If it's 3 a.m., all hell's breaking loose, who's in there that you can call? Years ago, I asked two guys on a Saturday and a Sunday at different events. One of them said, nobody. One of them was a church leader of a big church in Charlotte, sat in the barn. This is a third guy. He said, I don't have a friend like that. And then another guy told me down in Rock Hill, he said, I got one guy, and he just moved from here to Denver. The only guy in my life that I could pick up and call for help. He just moved across the country. And I know you do too, encourage men to be real, be vulnerable, and find that one or two man, find that man that'll be in the foxhole with you.
Yeah, it's good. Haines, I appreciate you today.
I'm just getting warmed up. You better.
I was about to say, man, look, we might have to make this a part two. Because look, I barely had any questions today. I feel like, dang, did I do my job? But no, I feel like God did exactly what he wanted to do today. This was good. This set me on fire, and it left me with a couple things like, yeah, I do need to go back and look at that again. Like that was a good reminder. Yeah. So I appreciate you.
Well, the iron sharpen iron thing.
Yeah.
We all are learning from each other. We should be learning from each other all the time.
For sure. And I think it's great that we can even say that, knowing that like at this point in my life, my iron still needs to be sharpened, and it doesn't dictate that my iron can only be sharpened by a man older than me or wiser than me or greater than me, because sometimes that man can be a man who's half my age.
I would say it in 2 sentences: walk with God and walk with others.
I would say this was discipleship today. I mean, discipleship, we're called to make disciples, and I don't think there's a set way of how that's supposed to look, but I think it starts with walking with another man. I'm gonna walk with you. We're gonna walk down this road, and maybe we'll keep walking together until one of us decides, I think I've walked far enough. I think this is where God is calling me to a different path.
And then he may bring another guy along, and you'll walk in, and we'll walk in.
There it is.
Yeah, baby, walk on.
Awesome.
Onward and upward.
Thank you, brother.
Hey,
love you, man. Appreciate you.
Enjoyed rambling. So if you're in the Charlotte area, usually from 6 to 7 o'clock, we either have food or bring food. We have different weeks. We had a food truck a few weeks ago, and then at 7 o'clock we do something spiritual together as men.
Men church.
Man church. We're building some campfires. And
yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, thank y'all so much for joining us. I love this. This is what sets my heart on fire. Just sitting around, just really just seeing what God's doing in another man's life and his story. And it encourages me. And so I pray that you received the encouragement today. I pray that you took something from this that was just like, yes, I felt seen. So love you guys. You guys be blessed, and we'll catch you on the next episode. All right.
And that wraps up another episode of God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm Justin Moore, and we want to give a huge thank you to all of you for tuning in and being part of our community. Your support means the world to us, and we hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. If what you heard resonated with you, please consider subscribing and leaving a review on today's video. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to connect with us on social media at God's Glory and Men's Real Stories for updates, new episode clips, and to share your thoughts on today's episode. We love hearing from you. If this conversation happened to shed a light on past experiences of yours that may have been happy moments or maybe hurtful moments, feel free to keep the conversation going in the comments below, so as a community we can listen, pray with you, or point you to helpful resources. Join us next time for another great episode. And until then, let's give God the glory for all he's doing in our stories.